Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Friday, March 19th, 2021. On today's episode, we're going to have a spoiler-filled discussion about The Falcon and Winter Soldier, Episode 1, New World Order. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Paul.
Hello, hello.
And Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
Okay, so we don't have any emails this week, but feel free after listening to this episode. If you have questions, comments, concerns, did you see any Easter eggs that we might have missed? Any speculation that you might have? Send it to me at peter@slashfilm.com. I can't promise you that we'll read it in an upcoming episode because, by next week's episode will air and that might invalidate some stuff. But, we will read each and every one of your emails. I promise you at least that, and we will feature some of the email. So please, if you have any theories, Easter eggs, speculation, or whatnot, send it in to us. Okay, let's get into our brief reactions. I know Jacob and I have both given our kind of like spoiler free reactions on the water cooler, and we'll reiterate some of those points in a second. But Ben is the only one I have not heard from because I think you watched it this morning.
Yeah, I actually got a screener, so I watched it yesterday afternoon.
Oh, okay. So what did you think?
Better than I thought it was going to be based on the trailers. I think a lot of people expected it to just be sort of like an empty kind of show, a little bit of like flashbang action, and that's kind of it. And I was surprised to see that, while we do get certainly more of that than we got in the early episodes of WandaVision, there actually does seem to be like some real meat on this bone. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that.
Well, very cool. I think I said on this week's water cooler that I was most surprised that the action was as big and just in scale, and it felt like a Marvel Cinematic movie or Marvel Cinematic Universe action sequence in like just how ambitious it is. And I'm just like happy that we're getting to connect with these characters on a more human level and deal with all the stuff that like we usually kind of fast forward through in the movies. You're usually fast forwarding to the next action scene, and we don't really get to deal with like how these people as humans are dealing with all these things that, there's all this interesting stuff going on in this world, and not just the world but to them personally. So I'm excited about all that. Jacob, what was your brief reaction to this first episode?
Yeah, I talked about this on the water cooler first time I could. I think it's a really strong start. I think the episode suffers a little bit from being part of the big, long movie approach, which we can talk about, in the episode ahead, where it feels less like an individual episode and more of half of a first act. And some people like TV like this. I think it's very much a Netflix approach. It's not one I always like. So I feel like it's really hard to talk about. It was even hard for me to write my review that's on the site right now, a spoiler-free, Thursday review, and not the spoiler-filled Friday review, because it's not clear what the show is going. Sam and Bucky, Falcon and Soldier, don't even share a scene in this first episode. It's still setting the stage. But I found myself really drawn to the character stuff. I found myself really drawn to the story of Sam and his family, and how being an Avenger does not change the fact that he's still a black man in America. And the show directly tackles that. I like how Sebastian Stan is allowed to do what he does best, which is brood. He's one of the best brooders in the business. And there's shots of Bucky brooding in his apartment, and brooding in alleys, and brooding in bars, and brooding with people. I am really excited to get to know Bucky and Sam. And the show comes armed with us already having an affection for them. So we're primed to like them. So even though the action is impressive, I am more impressed by how this is a character-driven episode about two characters who feel lost in modern America.
Yeah. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention that I didn't mention before is I'm also kind of excited that this seems like it's going to be hour-long episodes. Not that they're going to be 60 minutes long, but the running time for this episode, what was it, like nearly 50 minutes long?
Yeah,
or something?
47, I believe, is what it is.
Yeah, and coming off of WandaVision and even both seasons of The Mandalorian, like they've kind of hugged the 30-minute time limit. Some of them have gone a little bit longer, but I'm happy that, especially with this show, because we're only getting 6 episodes, as with WandaVision we got 9, I think.
Yeah, 9.
I think it was 9. Yeah, so I'm happy that we're getting a little bit of longer episodes. So, or hopefully. We're hopefully getting longer episodes. We don't know that. This could just be, a longer extended first episode. Ben, do you have anything else to say before we get into the breakdown?
No, I think we'll cover it all along the way.
Yeah. This episode is titled New World Order. Do you guys have any thoughts on that title?
No, it's exactly what the title you expect from a world that literally is rebuilding itself after the events of Endgame. And as we see, as we're told, and as we see, the world has fundamentally shifted in how its makeup and how people view the world and view borders and view who's in charge and who should be calling the shots. So it feels like the right title with no real secrets attached to it.
It's also an interesting meta title, considering that this was supposed to be the first show back. So this, this is the new world order for Marvel properties. Like, this was supposed to be the kickoff of the Disney Plus MCU era. And they're not going to change the title because the show had to shift a little bit in the schedule, but it would have been interesting as literally the first thing back after, what was it? Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah. And I like that it's not just New World Order for like the world, the larger world, and what's going on with the everybody trying to figure things out, but it's also a new world order for our two main characters and like them having to figure out their place in this post-flip world. Okay, let's start. In Endgame, Steve passed the torch to Falcon, giving him the shield, and the show seems to be Falcon grappling with the responsibility of filling Steve's shoes. And it opens with the scene of him. The opening scene actually, to me, seems like it's setting a stage for this entire like one season series, with him, replaying those events in his head of Steve passing the torch, and all the while he's putting the shield and he's preparing to give it away to the Smithsonian. Do you guys have any thoughts on this opening sequence?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to showrunner Malcolm Spellman, and we talked at length about Sam's role in this show and in this world, and the idea that Captain America as a symbol, in the Marvel universe, is one of tremendous hope, is like and tremendous courage, and it's something you step into easily. You don't take that mantle easily, even if you're another superhero. But for Sam, who is not this paragon of Aryan virtue that Chris Evans was, blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy. I mean, how can you possibly, in good conscience, wield the Stars and Stripes, knowing that a symbol that means one thing to some people means something the exact opposite to other people? And even though it's only on the edges of this episode, Sam never comes out and says it. It is so heavily implied that, why would a black man want to wear the Stars and Stripes? And that is a really compelling idea, especially in the post-Black Panther world, where Marvel has shown itself willing to talk about this stuff pretty bluntly. And I imagine we'll hear more about this more directly, spoken out loud in the future. But it's very clear that this is not just Sam Wilson being, oh man, I'm no Captain America. It's him saying, what is Captain America? What does this actually mean? And how can I represent that? And that to me is perhaps the most interesting angle of this entire episode so far.
Yeah, and Jacob, you had this very good interview with the showrunner. We're going to run that at the end of this episode, so stick around till the end because you're not going to want to miss that. But he speaks a lot to those points. But I just think it's interesting that they opened with this scene, because right from here we get this. Is it a flashback to this mission sequence, this action scene? I'm not quite sure if it's a flashback or because it seems like he's like getting ready to go to the Smithsonian. He's like putting his suit on and he's getting the shield ready to, but then we cut to the scene where he's on a mission to stop this terrorist group called the LAF, who do you guys know, is this a flashback? I watched it twice and I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe they just wanted to sort of subvert expectations a little bit and have a sort of quiet opening and sort of touch on it, even though I think it's silent. I don't think Sam actually says anything in that very opening where he's just like ironing his shirt and putting stuff on and looking at the shield and all of that. I think it just is a smart way to just by like Sam's face, by the facial expressions of Anthony Mackie, you can kind of see him grappling a little bit. I think it's just a smart way to sort of lay that groundwork for like those bigger ideas that are explored in the show, instead of just kicking it off with this big action scene that comes, just a few minutes later. I think it's just a quick little, I still don't know if it's exactly a flashback or if this takes place, in between, like where exactly this falls on the timeline. But yeah, I just think it's a smart like narrative structural decision for the overall tone of the episode.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they filmed it so that the entire opening scene was the Smithsonian stuff and the action came after that. And they found in the editing room that they wanted to get the action out of the gate, so they spliced it this way. I feel like it's, even if it's my guess would be that it's not like an intentional flashback. It's just a case of them realizing we have a powerful opening scene, then a lot of chatter with a lot of people around a museum, as opposed to getting you into the action. It really feels like a editing post-production choice, and actually it's a question we should ask the filmmakers. Should we interview them again?
I was actually going to suggest the opposite, Jacob. That yes, it was a decision made in post-production, but I was going to suggest that action scene was what originally opened the show, and then it goes into the Marvel Cinematic intro, which there was no cold opening for this, and then it goes to him going, that scene and him going to the Smithsonian, is what I was going to originally suggest. But yeah, I'm wondering what the choice is, because it does seem like a post-production choice. I would guess that this is not how it's written, but I could be wrong. Okay, so they're going after the Falcon has this mission with this terrorist group called LAF. I guess they're called Laugh. I don't know. But the interesting thing here is this group includes this guy named Batroc, who we've seen before. We saw him in Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I want to ask you, Ben, if Ben, since you're not as obsessive at Marvel as Peter and I am, did you recognize the lead terrorist as being the same bad guy from the opening scenes in Winter Soldier?
Absolutely not. No.
I will say I am obsessive, and I did not the first time I watched this.
Oh, I totally did. I'm the guy who absolutely notices as known in the comics, Batroc the Leaper, whose power in the comics he jumps a lot. He's just a terrorist.
Yeah, so he was in that scene in Winter Soldier where like there was this French pirate mercenary who was hired by Nick Fury, and this whole convoluted series of events, but whatever, to hijack the ship it was a cover as another cover to uncover classified info. But yeah, so now he's not hijacking a ship, he's hijacking a plane. So Falcon's mission is to rescue this hostage before they cross the border into Libya. And the Falcon uses his Red Wing drone to cut through Batroc's plane. LAF goons like fly around using wingsuits. They're battling in the skies while cutting through canyons. He's throwing like these wingsuit goons at the cliffs. Where he at one point goes into a helicopter, has a fight in a helicopter. He's trying to outrun like these heat-seeking missiles, and he captures the hostage right before they hit the Libya airspace. I don't know. I'm not going to say that the choreography of this was on level of like Winter Soldier and what the Russos are able to do, but I was just so very impressed with how ambitious this action sequence was and how big it is and how it doesn't look like it. Usually with TV, and even like the best TV, like when you have like action sequences, like you're doing a lot of like those close-ups of kicks and stuff because you don't have the time. You don't have the time and money to spend on what you normally do in a movie. And I was just so impressed on how this could be in a Marvel movie. Would it be like an action scene that I would be talking about in a Marvel movie? No. But like, I would totally believe this in a Marvel movie, and I was just so impressed by that. So I wanted to hear you guys, Ben. What did you think of the action sequence?
Let's see. There are three topics that are little points that I wanted to make. One, it reminded me a little bit of Top Gun. I thought it might have been like a nice little Top Gun reference in terms of like there's this scene in Top Gun where the characters are like flying around and doing like fake battle with each other and there's this concept of the hard line, which is like a line that they're not supposed to cross. And I think it's elevation instead of like a border like it is in this show. But I just thought, with all the aerial action photography, that maybe that was a little bit of an influence there. Another thing, I was surprised at like the sort of wanton deaths that occur during the sequence. Like you mentioned, people being hurled into the side of the canyon or whatever. And like at one point, I think Falcon throws some sort of detonation device, a sticky bomb or something, onto a helicopter, and it just blows up. And there are like people in that helicopter. And after WandaVision, which did not feature action in that kind of way, it just like gave me I kind of
but you don't see anybody die. You
right.
You see the helicopter blow up.
Right, but like, I mean, there's a lot of implied deaths, and I think you do actually see somebody like slam into the side of one of the canyons or something at one point. Anyway, it's not like
he could have still survived, Ben. He could have, like, at that point, after, like, wingsuited. I don't know. I'm being facetious there. I'm not.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's not like this has never been done in Marvel movies before. But I think just coming off of WandaVision, which is like a relatively clean show in terms of character deaths, I guess. I was just, it sort of took me aback for a second to like see, oh wow, we're like back in this corner of the Marvel Cinematic Universe where like people are actually going to get hurt and like maimed and or die.
Not to hijack your thread here, but I remember vividly when Winter Soldier came out, a bunch of my old school comic book friends, while they liked the movie, were saying, we're not sure how I feel about Falcon being a guy who fires machine guns. That's not what Falcon ever did. So yeah. MCU Falcon being a guy who straight up murks people is actually pretty new.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily fair, though, because, like, there's a scene where he gets into the plane and he's using his wings as a shield. So he's not ready to take on Captain America's shield, but he's still, like, using defense. And I get it. Like, he, at one point, throws that sticky bomb kind of thing. I don't know. I feel like it's all in service of him saving a good guy, and these are terrorists.
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't question the motivations. And again, like this kind of thing would be is in like every single action movie ever, and I don't like blink an eye at it. I think it's just the transition from WandaVision to this kind of like was like, oh, that's notable. We're back in this part of Marvel. So I just wanted to mention that. And then the third thing is like, as interesting as some of this is, there is a little part in the back of my head that's like, really, we're doing another trench run? Like this is the thing here. But like, is this really what the Tunisian landscape looks like? And I'm not like a geography expert, but like they were in a trench for a long, long time there. So I don't know exactly how this works, but it felt a little Star Warsy to me. And it's all under the same umbrella now. So that trench run has been replicated and a huge inspiration for tons and tons of filmmakers over the years. And I was just a little disappointed that they couldn't come up with something that was maybe a little bit more visually dynamic than, that again, which we've seen, approximately 1 billion times. But yeah, it was good for what it was.
Ben, this is a scene where I'm wondering if you, as someone who's relatively close to my age, grew up in the 90s with VHS tapes of all the big movies, did you also watch this scene in the back of your head, just think Independence Day, Independence Day, Independence Day?
Yeah, that's the one really that I was thinking of even more than Star Wars was Independence Day, because like, I mean, some of the things seem almost like shot for shot in certain moments, but yeah, that influence looms large, certainly.
Jacob, what did you think of the action sequence?
It's good. I mean, I've always had a weird issue with like Marvel superheroes essentially being literal mercenaries. But it's also a case where it's very standard action movie stuff. I'm not going to dwell on it. Ben dwelled on it and already better than I could have. It's strong action. However, when the episode ended and it came time for me to write my review, I was thinking a lot more about the character stuff than the action. I think it's a testament to the rest of the episode that this big action scene, while entertaining, is not what I took away from the episode.
Yeah, I fully agree with that too.
Yeah. Okay, so the next scene is he meets with First Lieutenant Torres, and Torres it might be a character that is in the comic books. Is that correct, Jacob?
Honestly,
Oh, you don't know?
I didn't even look this up. He did not ring a
Oh.
bell. If he is a comic book character, email us and let us know, because I didn't even
Oh, no, I
Google
know.
this.
I have the information here.
Oh, do you?
But I thought you were going to fill the backstory. Okay.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Please do this.
I finally know something that Jacob doesn't know. Oh my God. No, I don't know it. I looked this up. But in the comic books, there's a character named Joaquin Torres who we don't know that this is the same character, but he has the same last name. And he's the character that is going that takes the vacant Falcon slot once Sam becomes Captain America. So he becomes Falcon.
Interesting.
I have read the comic book run where Falcon becomes Captain America, but this character, if he's in there, did not ring a bell, did not register in any way whatsoever, to be honest.
Well, I'm guessing it's after that run or whatever, but I'm guessing, when Falcon becomes Captain America, someone's going to need to become Falcon. So maybe this character is being set up as the next Falcon, or maybe not. Maybe it's just a Easter egg for comic book fans.
And well, to be honest, I found Torres to be kind of a snooze. So it's
I was wondering what did you guys think of that character? Well, Jacob, you just answered, but Peter, what did you think of him?
I don't know. Like I don't know. He seems to do what he seems to accomplish what they need of him, but he's just there for a story purpose. I don't really feel like there's much to him other than the fact that, at one point Falcon does this, or I keep on calling him Falcon. We should be calling him Sam, because at some point he becomes a person here, and he tries to reach to he pats his leg to look for his wallet, acting like he can't find his wallet, and Torres offers to pay for him, which comes into play later on. So I don't know. He's a nice guy, but I don't know. I guess there really isn't much to him. Ben, what do you think?
My initial read on him was this guy is a double agent. He's working for the organization that he is talking to Sam about. And that may be me hoping that the show is more interesting in certain areas than it is willing to be. And that's totally fine if that doesn't end up being the case. But because the character is such a sort of Boy Scout trope of a character and does not seem super interesting on his face, I am hoping that there's something a little bit more devious or just interesting in some way about him. But that was my first read.
I didn't like this whole reveal of these flag smashers. He's using his phone to take a photo of this guy thanking Sam, and then I don't know, what is he doing? Is he using augmented reality? Is he watching a clip, but then he sees a symbol? I didn't even understand what was going on.
Yeah, it looked like augmented reality, and they have that sort of hand I don't know how you would
symbol.
Yeah, that hand symbol, basically, that I guess just marks maybe the site for specific events for that organization or something like that. And I don't know how something like that works. And is augmented reality really a thing that a terrorist group uses? I don't know. It strained a little bit of credulity to me, but I guess it was an interesting way to to depict those events. Jacob, did any of that give you pause at all?
No, I just assumed it's the future. This stuff happens in the future.
I guess that's true. We are supposed to be, this is set, several years ahead of where we are right now. So
I will say that Flag Smasher is a individual villain in the Marvel Comics, a character who is anti-nationality, Captain America, but also anti-Soviet communism. In fact, I'm looking at his Wikipedia page right now, and the frame showing him has him yelling, "What? I'm not a communist. I hate the Soviet Union. I hate what the Soviet Union stands for as much as I hate what America stands for." So he's that kind of villain in the comics. And I'm assuming we'll see an individual leader of this Flag Smasher show up at some point.
Well, I have an interesting bit on that. So the character in the comic books, his real name is Carl Morgenthau, I think is how you pronounce it. And we know that in this show, there's an actress named Erin Kellyman, who many of you might know as Enfy's Nest from Solo: A Star Wars Story, who plays a character named Carly Morgenthau. So I'm wondering if they've changed the leader of this group from this guy named Carl to this woman named Carly, and there's going to be a little bit of a swerve there. I don't know.
No,
Is
I
that
think
too much of a?
no, I think I was hedging my bets to mention I knew she was cast too. I wasn't sure which one to say, but we're here now. Yeah, I think absolutely it sounds like Carly Morgenthau is going to be a gender swap version of Flag Smasher, or the leader of the Flag Smashers, as it seems been tweaked here. And I also will say, if you listen to my interview with Malcolm Spellman at the end of this episode, he emphasizes that the TV show has multiple main villains, and they all have motivations the audience will often agree with, which I thought was very interesting. Especially since Flag Smasher, instead of being this sort of this virtue of sinister centrism from the comics, seems to be more of a not necessarily, maybe not well-minded, but a group whose intentions may ring true with people living in a chaotic world, where governments are at war with one another. So I'm very curious to see if Spellman's promised that maybe we'll kind of see what the Flag Smashers stand for. I'm really hoping that it lives up to what he was teasing in our interview.
Yeah, and I do want to mention that in this podcast and every one of our spoiler podcasts, we don't give you any inside info into spoilers, but this is an actress who was cast in this role, and that was announced. That the name of the role was announced. So, anybody with Google could connect the dots there. I don't know. I mean, she could still be the daughter of the leader of Flag Smashers, right?
I feel like if you cast her, she's a very talented, interesting actress. If you cast her, you make her the lead villain, man. You put her in a costume, you let her punch Falcon with a soldier in the face. That's what I want from that.
Well, Torres tells Sam that the Flag Smashers are a terrorist group who thought things were better during the blip, and they want a unified world without borders. I think this is like a very interesting idea, and I really wish there was a way for us to explore what would happen to this world if the blip actually happened. Like, I feel like Marvel could do a TV series, like an anthology series, just exploring that in a non-superhero way. Because, I don't know, there's so many interesting things that could happen during that time, or when people come back. Like, the people, the have-nots that somehow get more power out of it, now are they thrust out of power because the people that were above them come back? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's interesting things to explore there. What do you guys think of this idea of the group of Flag Smashers?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what Jacob was just talking about, Spellman sort of setting up this idea that we're going to be able to relate to their worldview makes a lot of sense, in exactly what you're just talking about, Peter. Like the idea of, I mean, it's almost like Infinity War and Endgame set up something that is like too big to ever fully unravel. Like this concept is so huge, and the ramifications are so massive that even after all of the Marvel shows that they've announced and all the movies that they've announced, I still feel like there's going to be enough for 5 whole shows to really to dig in on this and cover it from all of the angles that it needs to be covered, to fully get an understanding of exactly how all these different aspects, social, political, like everything, how all of this shapes up and sort of reconfigures itself in the wake of this huge universe altering event. It's so big. There's so much room to explore, and I think I wonder if they know exactly how much room there really is here.
I almost wish that we didn't get Avengers Endgame so soon after Infinity War, and that we had a whole phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to delve into this more.
Oh man, that's an interesting what if scenario. I'd never even considered that, because it seems too dangerous, quote unquote, for a studio to do that, to take away a character like Tom Holland, or all these beloved characters who were snapped away, and just like literally take them off the board for like 5 years while they do a whole nother phase. But God, that is like a really interesting idea, and I think their return might have even hit harder. And we certainly would be sympathizing more with the people who were left behind, and maybe even, be more aligned with the worldview of something like a Flag Smasher organization, if that were the case.
Yeah,
but I'm curious to see how that plays out.
I do want to mention that in Sam Wilson Captain America, the comic book series, the character Flag Smasher has this whole monologue about how all the borders across the world should be open. So it does seem like they are adapting this largely from the comics, even though it isn't one main Flag Smasher character. Do you actually, Jacob? Let me ask you that. Do you think later we will have a Flag Smasher that actress from Solo is going to be Flag Smasher, or do you think it's just going to be a group?
It's a good question. I mean, if this was 15 years ago, I would say it would be just a group. But Marvel has shown its willingness to put people in costumes, and like embrace its source material more so over the past decade. And the fact that we've already seen in the trailers that a certain Captain America Civil War character is back and wearing his classic costume or a version of it has me fingers crossed that even if she's not calling herself the Flag Smasher, she will at least wear a fun Marvel costume that she. Because if I was cast Peter as a Marvel supervillain and I didn't get a costume, I'd feel ripped off and I'd be very angry about it. But that's just me.
Well, to be fair, she already had like one of the coolest costumes ever in Star Wars. So
true. So why ruin the streak? Why ruin the streak, Peter?
Yeah, I do feel like Enfys Nest does not get enough love. Like that character, like that costume and the speeder bike thing that she rides. I don't know. It's very cool. Anyways, let's move on. Torres relays this theory that Steve is actually alive and he's on a secret base on the moon. Jacob, I wanted to ask you, like, is this like a reference to the Watcher? Like, what is this? Is it just a joke, or
this is a joke reference to what happened to the original Nick Fury, not Black Nick Fury, but old white guy Nick Fury from the comics, who ended up being stationed on the moon as Earth's new Watcher. It's a whole thing.
Do you think we'll actually see old man Steve Rogers in this series?
I don't want to speculate too much because speculation is dangerous, is how we get to Mephisto. But I think I think that a single scene with aged Steve Rogers would be appropriate. But I'm really hoping, I kind of hope not, because I want the show to be about Sam and Bucky, not about Steve.
Yeah, I mean, you could also have there's also the possibility they could have a flashback sequence where we see a moment between Steve and Sam, or Steve and Bucky, and that Chris came back and filmed, something like that as well. So I don't know. Okay, so Sam pretends to shuffle for his wallet there. That was the scene I mentioned before. And we now cut to the Smithsonian, and Falcon gives a speech saying how we need new heroes. But he obviously doesn't want to take up that large of a mantle, or he feels like he's not worthy. He donates Captain America's shield to the museum, and we reveal that Don Cheadle is in the audience of reprising his role as Rhodey. And I honestly, I think we reported this, that he was in the show, but I must have missed that report because I honestly didn't expect to see him in this show. And I wanted to ask you guys, Ben, do you think Rhodey's going to have a big role in this show?
No, because there's that what is the armor wars, or whatever the upcoming Marvel Disney Plus show is, that I think he's going to be more centered in. So I feel like he's just going to be sort of, more of a bureaucratic, like, political figure who just maybe pops in around the edges occasionally. I would be surprised if he like factors heavily into the action here.
Okay. I was just wondering because I feel like they're leading us to believe that he might be more involved in this, what happens with the shield later in this episode, than, I don't know, maybe he is. Jacob, what do you think?
No comment, because I cannot imagine Rhodey being on board with any of this. I want, I think Rhodey's going to pop up, wish Sam good luck a few times, and vanish to the sidelines for the rest of the series.
I really just think it's the idea of like these two black men standing together and like looking at, this wall of imagery of, a white Captain America, and like just the juxtaposition of these two guys who are, very much like in the system, so to speak, the governmental structure, power structure, but they're black. And what does that mean? And like, I just think it's a representation of some of the ideas that this show is sort of toying with a little bit here.
Fair enough. Okay, so they walk through this Captain America exhibit, and this is the same exhibit, or a evolution of the same exhibit that we saw in Winter Soldier. And Rhodey asks Falcon why he didn't take up the mantle, and Falcon just said it just. What was his response? Just that like he didn't feel worthy or something. And Rhodey says that the world is a chaotic, broken place right now, and it basically alludes to like we need you to take up the mantle, but it's obviously not happening. There's we now go to Bucky. This is the first time we go to Bucky, and this is a flashback where we see him kill a half dozen henchmen, and he ends up coming face to face with one innocent student who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And this was like when he was on one of his old he was being controlled by Hydra, and he was on a mission, and he ends up killing this young student, and he wakes up from this nightmare in his apartment, which is very, I think, sparse might be the word. There's really not much in his apartment. He's sleeping on the wooden floor. And there's something I wanted to mention, because if you go back and rewatch Winter Soldier, there's like this interaction between Sam and Steve when they first meet in Winter Soldier. Sam was running this Veterans Association group, and they had this bonding moment over this conversation about how soldiers usually find their beds to be too soft when they come back to civilian life, and how they tend to like be more comfortable sleeping on the floor. So I don't know. I thought that was a cool throwback to all that. And honestly, I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't expecting this show to be so much of like a sequel to Winter Soldier.
Yeah, even the visual palette, the washed out gray, that old school thriller look, it makes it feel like it's very much a cousin or a sibling to Winter Soldier in a lot of ways. I mean, they both have similar ambitions, which are these, political thrillers set in Marvel Universe. And I think your catch of Bucky sleep on the floor, Peter, I didn't catch that at all. That's a really good observation. But I will say, as good as Sebastian Stan is in this show, and I think he is very good, the image of Bucky waking up in his sparse apartment, big robot arm, has made me giggle just a little bit.
Were you gonna say something, Ben?
Well, the idea of Bucky laying on the floor, it reminded me a little bit of the Count of Monte Cristo. I don't know if you guys are like super familiar with. I'm actually reading the book, the novel, for the first time right now, but and I haven't gotten to this part yet. But I'm very familiar with like the 2002 Jim Caviezel starring adaptation. And there's a moment where he comes back from, he like has discovered this treasure, and he's super rich now, and like his I don't know, like valet or whatever walks into his bedroom and realizes that this super rich guy is sleeping on the floor, and he's just not, because he spent so many years in the Chateau d'If, this prison, and he is not used to this life of luxury. And I feel like that sort of same thing sort of applies to Bucky here. Like, he has spent so much of his life in the prison of not being able to control his own actions, and like, he's just been essentially mind controlled for decades and decades and decades. And like he says, he's like 100 and something years old here. So just the idea of him just like slowly, finally easing into a world that he has to like, carve out and make a place for himself. I just thought it was an interesting sort of, illusion there.
Yeah, and then we learned that Bucky is seeing a therapist, and the therapist is played by Amy Quinto, who is neither of you guys would know, but she plays the lieutenant on the show Bosch, and she's really good. So I assume that this is a sizable role, because she has a sizable role on that show and other stuff too. Bucky's been spending his time making amends for his past sins, and is also been ignoring Sam's messages, and he has no friends. He trusts no one. He lies to the therapist about his nightmares and how he's making amends and the process that she wants him to adhere to. He's kind of fudging the rules quite a bit. You know what? I never read any of the Winter Soldier comic books and stuff, so I never really thought about the psychological effect that that everything that Bucky went through would have on him, and how he would be dealing with it. And I didn't, when they announced the Falcon and Winter Soldier show, I just thought this was going to be this fun buddy cop, Marvel show. And I didn't anticipate, them dealing with this and him having, as he says, going from one fight to another for 90 years and what effect that has on a person. Were you guys at all surprised? Jacob, is this something the comic books deal with a little bit, or?
Yeah, Bucky being haunted and guilty is very much Bucky's thing. I think specifically of Ed Brubaker's Winter Soldier run from, I guess, maybe close to a decade ago as the one that stands out as being a really good Bucky comic. But I think this whole scene with the therapist is really good. I mean, I think him and Sam both have really good character scenes, and I love how Kerry Scoggin shoots this. I love how it gets increasingly filmed in these claustrophobic close-ups. It goes from being, medium shots to being like as in Bucky's face as you possibly can. You can see his pores practically, and I love how the scene really simulates how uncomfortable Bucky is in his own skin and how each room he's in, he just is trapped. And so many Marvel shows follow a pretty familiar aesthetic by design that I really enjoyed. How the filmmaking here really emphasizes how much Bucky needs to get out of this room.
Yeah, and that scene is 5 minutes long, which is like a pretty significant chunk of this episode, like for just a therapy scene. And there are a couple of little flashback moments sort of peppered in there, but I was just surprised that, I mean, this is sort of what we have always said that we wanted, like more time with these characters, and they're really digging in an interesting way. And I love the background that Bucky is sort of placed up against in this therapist's office, because it's just this. He's sitting in this huge chair, and there's a picture on the wall behind him. The entire wall looks like a forest, and it's just this interesting visual of like this guy who is, maybe you could say he's like out of the woods finally of like, this past life that he's been in, or also like the idea of like, pick a metaphor that you could apply here. You can't see the forest through the trees, like that kind of thing. Like there are so many of those that you could apply to Bucky's headspace in this moment. I just like the idea that it's not just a boring old office, just the production design of putting the forest there. I thought was a nice touch.
I love that metaphor. That's not something I even thought about. I just thought about when I was a kid, I used to go to this dentist, and one of the walls was just like this big, gigantic photo of the whole wallpaper was just a gigantic folder, like a photo of like a tropical paradise. Just like it always just rubbed me the wrong way that like people are in this chair screaming as they're getting root canals and stuff, and there's like the wallpaper is just like this Hawaii or whatever. But I know I like that metaphor quite a bit. Okay, we do see a list of names of people that he needs to make amends for, and I'm not going to go down the whole list. I'm sure you could look online. There's people that have done the research, and there's a lot of Marvel Deep Cup references here. Like there's the family of the Red Barbarian. There's Agent Hauser. The one I do want to bring a spotlight to is H. Zemo, and that's Baron Zemo. That's the character played by Daniel Bruhl, who was seen in Captain America Civil War. And I think he has a big role in this series. Is that correct, Jacob?
Yeah, he's been all over the trailers, all over the marketing. In fact, he was very much positioned to be the lead villain. So the fact that he's not, seen or mentioned by name in this episode is very interesting. But Zemo is traditionally a main Captain America villain. So in absence of Captain America, there's his two best friends. So I think we'll be seeing the return of Baron Zemo very soon.
How do you think he's going to play into this show?
I have no idea. I could have made a guess before the series started, but now that I've seen this episode where it's going with the Flag Smashers, with the final moments, with introduce a new character, I do not know how Zemo fits into this, other than an agent of chaos out for revenge against everybody who hurt him at this point, namely the American government. So we'll see. I do wonder if his revenge will be against Bucky and Sam, or if he's just going to target the symbol that is Captain America for being the guy responsible for his downfall in many ways. Yeah.
It's also revealed in the scene that the United States has given Bucky a pardon for all the killing and all the espionage, all the stuff that he's done, which seems like a big thing, but I guess the world's changed after this blip. So,
Peter, we need as many superheroes as we can. They're all dying like flies.
Yeah. Bucky does have one friend. It's Mr. Nakahima. Is that how you pronounce it? His name is what is his first name? I wrote it down here
I think it's
somewhere.
Yori.
Yori. I'll just call him Yori. He's an old man. He's still grieving over the death of his son, and we quickly realize that the death of his son that was killed is the innocent man that Bucky killed in the flashback. There's a couple interesting things here. This is something I found on Twitter, so this wasn't an observation I had. But the first scene we see of Bucky and Yori is in this alleyway in Brooklyn, and Bucky comes to Yori's aid as he's arguing with this guy in this alleyway. And it kind of mirrors that scene in Captain America: The First Avenger, where Bucky saves his weak friend Steve in a similar alleyway and somewhere in Brooklyn. So I don't know. I thought that was like an interesting parallel there. While they're eating at their usual restaurant spot, the old man ends up setting Bucky up on a date with the server, and Bucky ends up showing up to the date with a bouquet of flowers. Uh, do, do you think like they've had conversations about like him liking her, or like I don't know? I guess there's a history here. They keep on coming to this restaurant. What actually? What? Let me ask the bigger question. What do you think of this relationship between Yori and Bucky?
I really liked it because it's really is the energy is two old men hanging
Yeah,
out. As somebody who Bucky can actually probably relate to, somebody who's had a lot of pain in his life, who was in his prime, years and years ago, and it makes perfect sense to me that Bucky's best bud would be an old man who is also dealing with his own trauma and his own troubles. And I love him setting Bucky up with a server because you definitely get the impression that even if Bucky's never said anything, this old guy is observant. He's watched Bucky and he's watched that he probably doesn't get a lot of dates, and he's old enough to get away with the public embarrassment of trying that kind of thing. So I think it's a really fun dynamic. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I thought it was, harmless and fun. That's not, frankly, the entire Bucky subplot in this episode is not my favorite. I was much more interested in the Sam stuff that comes a little bit later on. So I was a little impatient during this stretch, but I think it's a good way. She's asking him questions on their date, and so it's a good way to sort of hide exposition and catch people up on the state of where Bucky is. So it works for me more on I guess on a functional level than on like an entertainment level, if that makes sense.
I don't know. I just like this relationship between the two, and I hope it's something that is larger spanning than just him eventually being forgiven. Like I don't know. It's there's some kind of something to that dynamic. I don't know what it is. I can't place my finger on it. But okay. So on this date, they drink beers and play a game of Battleship, and there's this moment, this very quiet, very quick moment that I'm sure most people didn't even give much of notice to, but I wanted to bring up here because I thought it was interesting because, this is a Marvel show. They don't need to include a small, quiet moment like this in there. And I think it means something. While his date is away grabbing them beers, Bucky looks at this cat. There's this like lucky cat, I think is what they call him. It's one of those Japanese ceramic figurines that has a mechanical paw that keeps waving back and forth. It's like a beckoning gesture, and it's usually traditionally a lot of Japanese businesses put it at the entrance of their businesses. And Bucky looks down at it and momentarily stops the paw from rocking, but after he stops it, it just keeps on going anyways. And I was thinking to myself, like, why is this moment here? It's more than just a comedic beat. And it occurred to me, a couple things occurred to me. Number one, Bucky is also left-handed, like the cat. And also, Bucky was created for a specific purpose, just like the cat. And like he said, he went from one fight to another for 90 years, and now he wants to stop. And there's this cat that, can't stop, just keeps on going. Uh, I don't know. I think. What do you guys did that moment with the cat even register to you guys? I'm curious.
I read his comedic beat at first, but I think it's a really I think the show invites these kind of questions more so than WandaVision did Mephisto, unless the cat is Mephisto in this scene. I think I think between Bucky sleeping on the floor and you're reading here, there's just enough richness that I mean, I love that there's a Marvel show that shows enough detail for us to even have these thematic conversations where it's not just perfunctory.
Yeah. Okay, so when the subject of Yuri comes up and his dead son, Bucky rushes off and he shows up at Yuri's place and we see the shrine to his dead son in the background, and Bucky quickly, leaves, and he finds himself unable to cross Yuri's name off his list. And I'm guessing this is going to become a big thing this season. He's eventually going to be able to cross that name off the list. But let's get to the part that Ben is interested in. Let's get to Louisiana, where Sam is reunited with his sister and nephew. They are hard up after 5 years. He and with Sam and many, half the world gone. They have come into financial straits. I get the impression that they weren't like well off before then, anyways. But without the help, they have kind of things are desperate. And despite his star status as an Avenger, he's unable to get them a bank loan. And I think this is probably the best scene of this episode. It's a great sequence for many reasons. First of all, before we get to the serious stuff, I've always been curious, like who pays superheroes. I love that Marvel like had that question come up, like on, like who pays? I mean, obviously Stark provided, Avengers Tower and stuff like that, but like, how do these superheroes get paid? Like, have you guys ever thought about that?
I have, and Marvel actually has an answer at one point, Peter. Which is that at one point it's established that the Avengers get paid $1,000 a week by a trust fund set up by Tony Stark. And that's why Spider-Man was so desperate to become an Avenger at one point, because he needed the money to survive.
I like that. I wonder if that's ever going to come into play in the MCU, because they're doing all this work, saving our lives. Jacob, they should at least get $1,000 a week.
Yeah, it's not in the Vision comic series from a few years ago. The really good one that won a bunch of awards. That's about Vision creating his own robotic family living in the suburbs of Virginia. It's mentioned that he works as an advisor to the White House, where he is showing up to essentially advise on superhero matters. But it's an unpaid position, and his family is struggling. And it's an ongoing subplot about how can Vision actually lock down paid work in DC, or is he going to have to like find another way to make money? So I love that the MCU has actually finally addressed the idea of superheroism as a thankless task for people who are doing it not for the money, because holy crap, could they use that money?
Yeah. And speaking to what you were talking about earlier, I think that this is a very interesting scene in a Marvel show that's clearly going to be about delving into the struggle of a Black hero in the cinematic universe of Marvel. And to add insult to injury, when the bank teller denies them the loan and still asks for a selfie afterwards.
Yeah, I talked to. This is my Malcolm Spellman interview. You can hear him say it himself after this podcast. But I mean, it's just a long running thing of Black people in positions of authority, whether it be sports figures or politicians, being celebrated in one way, and then but also just being subject to the same rules that apply to other Black Americans. And you can write entire books about the history of Black families being denied bank loans, and it being put straight up here. Here's an Avenger. Here's a celebrity, a guy who walks the room and people light up and want selfies, but still can't get that bank loan. And that is an incredibly real slap to the face. I think Anthony Mackie really underplays it here, and rightfully, and it's a really good performance choice, because it's not played like as an outrage thing. It's played as Sam's been here, so many times, and maybe not denied bank loans exactly like this, but he's been in situations where the microaggressions, have piled up from a smiling face across the desk, and it's played with such familiarity, such disappointment, such here we are again. Ben, I think this is a key scene of the episode. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, fully. And I mean, this is the It's not only that Anthony Mackie's Sam has been there, but his sister, Sarah, who's played by, what is the actress's name? Adapero Oduye, I think is how you pronounce it. She is great in the show so far, and I love seeing that family dynamic, but like the sort of like almost defeatist slash realistic perspective that she has versus pitted against Sam's like sort of idealism, I think is really interesting, because Sam has been, in a world where people like Tony Stark have been able to solve problems by throwing money at it, and superhero teams and all that kind of stuff, but sort of returning to this grounded real world environment, and trying to like revitalize a family business is not something that like superhero powers can really help with. So I just thought it was a really, really interesting, like especially human moment in a show that is supposed to be about superheroes and people with metal arms and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought it was hopefully a window into the type of treatment that we're going to see throughout the rest of the series.
Yeah, I'm hoping this isn't just backstory. I'm hoping this delves further into... I mean, judging by your interview, which everybody's going to listen to later.
You really should, because Malcolm Spellman, I was skeptical about a lot of this stuff, and he, unless he was overselling himself, overselling the show, he made clear this is what the show is about. The show is about the anxieties you feel right now in 2021, but in the Marvel Universe. So I'm really hoping this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, I have a little funny nitpick here. So you mean to tell me that this loan officer has not seen an influx of blip people come in looking for loans? He seems like so surprised that this person who wants a loan hasn't worked in 5 years.
Yeah, that was a weird line where he's like, I'm not seeing anything for the last 5 years here. And Sam's like, yeah, I've been gone like, all these billions of other people. I just thought that might have been a way for the show to really hammer home to play to the back row of the crowd, like, hey, we're in a post-snap world kind of scenario. And it did read as like a tiny false note within this larger symphony. But yeah.
Yeah, it's not that much of a nitpick. It just, I don't know, it struck me as strange the way it was written. But okay, so Sam tries to fix his family's boat himself and is unable to do so. He can save the world, but he can't save his family's business. And we go to Switzerland, where Torres attends a flash mob meetup for this group of flag smashers. And he tries to learn some more, or make some arrests, or whatever he's trying to do. I don't even know what he's trying to do. But
does Torres seem incompetent in the scene? He seems really incompetent.
Yes, but also he comes face to face with some masked terrorists who seem to have superpowers.
I don't know. I feel like if you are a member of the military or of a Secret Service organization of some kind in the Marvel Universe, you've had over 10 years now to get your act together when it comes to knowing how to confront people in masks. I feel like he's acting like this is pre-Battle of New York bullshit, as opposed to somebody who should know what he's doing.
Yeah, I think that whole character is supposed to just be like the audience surrogate, and it sort of is a weird line to draw when like he's an armed forces officer of some kind. So like theoretically he would have all of this, all of these skills and training and all of this kind of stuff, but also he's supposed to be like I'm in over my head in this situation, just like any of you would be if you were to step into this kind of environment kind of thing. So it's like, what exactly are we doing here? What's going on here?
Yeah, Sam's like, aren't you supposed to be like just looking at them on the internet? Like, why are you there? But I did mention that they like seem to have superpowers. Do they have superpowers? How do they have superpowers?
Or is it just that one person who has superpowers? Because it seems like just that one person has like super strength, at least. I don't know, Jacob. What did you think about that?
Jury's still out. I have no idea.
I don't think when they're like handing out those masks that the masks bestow power on anybody, obviously, because like he had one. But so I think it's just one person that has that's like overly super strengthified or whatever.
I mean, because this is related to the Captain America universe, I have to assume that super serum is somehow involved, but I don't know. I guess we'll learn in the upcoming episodes. But Torres FaceTimes Sam and shows him the footage of the altercation. And just then on TV, there's a press conference in Washington, D.C. from the Department of Defense. And the announcement is of a new Captain America, a symbol to inspire and protect. And out comes actor Wyatt Russell, who you might remember from, 10 Cloverfield Lane. What else is he in?
He's an overlord.
Overlord. Yeah, he was in that
He's in-
FX show. What was that I didn't watch?
Is it Ladder 43? Is that right?
Lodge
I don't
49.
remember. Lodge
Lodge,
40.
yeah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
Ladder 43 is a John Travolta movie from many years ago. Yeah, he was in 22 Jump Street. That's probably the biggest
yeah.
thing that our audience would know him from.
Cowboys and Aliens. How can we forget him playing Little Mickey in Cowboys and Aliens?
I definitely did.
Or Zook Haith in 22 Jump Street.
And he is Kurt Russell's son. And
looks it.
What?
And looks it. He looks just like his father. It's wild.
Yeah. And he's in the first Avenger costume, complete with the shield that was, I guess it's the same shield that Sam donated to the Smithsonian, which seems like a really big slap in the face to Sam. Sam seems to immediately regret this. One thing I wanted to point out after seeing this episode a second time, that when he was at the Smithsonian, there was this government official that came up to Sam and said thanked him for doing it or something like that, and that is the same government official that makes the announcement at Washington DC. So yeah, so Wyatt plays this character. Or before we get into this, actually, Ben, what did you think of this moment?
Wyatt Russell has a real goofy face in that mask. That was my big takeaway from this. He's got this aw shucks smile on his face, and just like the roundness of it, and like we haven't seen Captain America wear, I guess he still wears it in Endgame occasionally. I'm just so used to seeing Chris Evans without wearing that mask and like wearing the costume from the neck down, that I just want to see. Wyatt Russell is like a handsome dude. He's got like a glorious mane of hair. I just want to see I want to see him maskless in that costume, but wrapped up with that little jaw strap and everything. I was just like, man, what a goofy image this is. But I think it was done purposefully.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's the point. The point is this is not right. What is going on here? Who is this guy, and why is he winking at us? And why is that not Steve Rogers? Jacob, what did you think?
It's a good moment. It's a good cliffhanger. It's definitely the big insult to end the episode. After donating that shield in a moment of trying to honor his friend, here it is being spit back out of him. The thing that he thought he could never replace. A bunch of government goons who said, "Well, we've replaced you," and I feel like this is going to be the driving, force going forward for Sam. And I'm really curious to see how Wyatt Russell's character fits into this episode, because the character he's playing from the comics, I'll save this for when we're done with our main discussion because it's potential spoilers. Interesting character, to say the least.
Okay, why don't we just get into the speculation section, because there's that, and then there's some references in the credit sequence itself, which I think could be considered speculation and spoilers. So if you don't want to listen to it, tune out now, or you can fast forward. I'll put the time code of when the interview with the showrunner is in the show notes. But I think most of the people here, they're here for a spoiler discussion because they want to speculate and stuff. So Jacob, tell us about Wyatt's character.
Yeah, he plays John Walker, who has a long history of being an anti-hero and a villain in the Marvel Universe in the comics. He was a replacement Captain America when Steve Rogers stepped away, and he became a character named U.S. Agent after that, who sort of wears a very similar Captain America costume with some key changes. And essentially, well, he looks like Steve Rogers. He has that, old-fashioned, clean-cut, American, leading man look. He is a much harder-edged person with really broken morals. He fights like Batman in that it's just take no prisoners. He does not pull the punches like Steve does. And he doesn't have Steve's moral compass. He's essentially if Captain America broke bad, more or less. And U.S. Agent has a long history of, occasionally fighting on the side of good, but more often fighting on the side of gray, of being like a guy who you don't know if you can trust him. And he's a really interesting character because he represents what a lot of people think America is, which is this sort of all stars and stripes and bluster, but behind the scenes, breaking arms and legs and hurting people and causing more damage than he is saving. So John Walker seems to be at least the third villain of the show, next to the still unseen Baron Zemo and the Flag Smashers.
Yeah, and then the credit sequence has like some imagery that it has a bunch of references in it. One of them is a reference to the Power Broker. Do you know who the Power Broker is, Jacob? Do you have the backstory on that? I know it's a scientist, like a villainous scientist, and they created like super soldiers, but I don't know more than that.
Once again, Peter, my Marvel knowledge is slipping here. I cannot tell you who the Power Broker is. I just pulled up his Wikipedia page so I can tell you next time. Honestly,
sorry to put you on the spot,
Jacob. Oh, no, I'm happy on the spot. Now the listeners will now know that my Marvel knowledge only goes so far. And it turns out that WandaVision and Falcon Winter Soldier are the points where the Marvel universe has officially spread out wide enough that I am now unable to tell you much about certain characters.
Yeah, well, I know this character was rumored to appear in the show. I don't know much more than that. I'm sure we'll find out in the weeks to come. And there's a brief shot of Carl Lumbly, who is believed to be playing Isaiah Bradley in the show. Isaiah Bradley is from the comics, was the first Black Captain America.
Yeah, this is a storyline that I'm very curious about because there is a long, true history of Black soldiers, especially during World War II, being used for really ugly experimentation and really horrible mistreatment. And the idea that the first Captain America was not Steve Rogers, but a Black man who was experimented on, is something that really rings true with actual history. I remember when Winter Soldier came out, there were so many people who cried foul about how Operation Paperclip can't be a real thing. Why would America hire Nazis after World War II to bring them to the fold when that actually happened? Like, that was Winter Soldier referencing actual events, but like adding fictional characters into it. And I'm curious if this is where this series is going. If it's going to use actual history to feed the backstory of Captain America and the Super Soldier Serum, because it would really continue the Winter Soldier comparison, and it would continue Sam's story, the idea of, one, why should he represent a nation that did this to other Black men? But two, the first Captain America was also a Black man. So I think that's where this is going. Fingers crossed they go for it. Don't soft shoe it.
Yeah, and the whole Bradley storyline, it can be found in this miniseries called Truth, Red, White, and Black. So if you want to look that up, there's a lot of people that listen to our podcast, Jacob, that don't read the comics. If anybody wanted, I know with WandaVision, we pointed people to the Vision comic and we pointed people to House of M. Is there any other comics other than Truth, Red, White, and Black that people might want to look into if they want to, further delve into the inspirations of the show?
Off the top of my head, and I'm sure people listening may have better recommendations than me, a few years ago, there was a Captain America run where Sam took up the mantle and was Captain America for a good couple of years in the comics. That one, I didn't read all of it, but I read enough of it to know it was good. And I would really recommend Ed Brubaker's Winter Soldier run. I think it's just called The Winter Soldier, and I think it's only less than 20 issues. It's a really good espionage comic starring Bucky, and his scenes in this episode remind me a lot of that comic series.
Okay, very cool. Speculation. Ben, where do you think this is headed?
Oh boy. I don't really know. I think like I said, I would love for that soldier character to be to have something more devious up his sleeve, just to mix things up a little bit.
It feels like we already have enough villains though. Like in the mix, we have the flag. Wait, what are they? Flag Smasher. We have this new Captain America who probably is whatever. And
yeah, I'm curious about that. Is he going to be a villain in this show, or is he just going to be sort of a mouthpiece? I'm guessing you don't hire somebody like Wyatt Russell and just have him be, sort of a figurehead kind of guy. Although he does certainly have like the chiseled jaw, that the whole look down very well. I think he's talented enough that Marvel knows that they have to use him to his fullest potential. So I'm hoping that it ends up with some sort of big confrontation there. But like, what are the sources that are pulling the strings for that? Is there? I'm worried a little bit that there's been another infiltration or something. That this is like a larger I hope the show doesn't
The
is smart
government
enough.
has now been infiltrated again.
Yeah, I hope that the show is smart enough, and it sounds like from listening to Spellman's interview that the show is not going to go in that direction, and it's just going to be the idea of like the government just looking for another person to sort of take on this mantle, just to, I don't know, inspire the population and sort of maybe redirect some of these simmering tensions in society that we've seen in this post blip, post snap sort of scenario. And sort of channel optimism through a physical embodiment. I hope it's nothing more than that, because if there's, some sort of, another infiltration or some sort of other government nonsense going on, I'm just going to roll my eyes a little bit. But I don't know, Peter, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Did you see? I know we had a lot of discussions during the WandaVision show about Hayward, and we were all like anticipating, like, oh no, it's going to be this an evil government organization. But it just turned out that he was a dick, and he was overusing his resources for not so great things. And I wanted to bring this up because I saw when the finale aired, like at the end of the finale of WandaVision, spoilers for WandaVision, but Hayward gets arrested in those last few minutes of the show. And I saw some people online. I saw there's some people being retweeted into my feed that were arguing, what did Hayward do to get arrested? They were like defending Hayward.
Come on.
Yes. They're like, he didn't kill anybody. He didn't.
He only aimed a gun at children and pulled the trigger, but.
Jacob, do you have any further speculation of where this show is headed?
I can't say
or where you want it to go.
I'm not so sure because, like I said, they've emphasized this is a 6-hour-long movie for better or worse, and at this point, the pieces still be maneuvered together. And at the end of most TV pilots or TV first episodes, the pieces are in play for you to know what the show is about and where it's going, and there's a hook. And here, the hook is it's Marvel, watch it, as opposed to making it more clear about what the show wants to say going forward about its plot and where this action is heading. I mean, I imagine there will be a Falcon and a Winter Soldier teaming up and fighting at least 3 bad guys. That's
at least 3. It's not more.
Prediction, Peter.
Okay. Well, I think this show is interesting enough that we'll probably be doing weekly episodes of it. I'm not going to commit to this now, but we'll definitely do more. So look out for those probably every Friday. And we do have your interview with the showrunner. Do you want to tee this up?
Yeah, I'll tee it up. This was recorded over Zoom using my phone recorder. The audio quality, not the best, but you should hear us both just fine. It's about 10 minutes long, and this is the interview that I did where I went from being like, this show is good, I'm looking forward to watching it, to being, oh, is this what this show is about? Okay, let's go. So I hope you listen to this and enjoy it as much as I did participating in it.
Yeah, and actually, we should give some backstory of who's in. I usually do that with these shows. The showrunner, actually, Marvel doesn't call them showrunners, but he's pretty much being the showrunner. What has he done before Falcon and Winter Soldier? I know he was involved with Empire.
Yeah, he was a writer on Empire, writer-producer, and he is interesting because for so many years, I have heard his name bandied about as being like one of those great writers whose work doesn't often get made, and he's attached to a lot of things that don't come together. And I know that he has Empire. He has a movie called Our Family Wedding, and he produced the name of it, Hip Hop Uncovered, a really well-liked Hulu documentary series. So this feels like a long time coming for a guy who's had so much respect in the industry, but not as many credits as you would hope he would.
His name also came up around the time of Confederate, the sort of infamous show that Benioff and Weiss, the showrunners of Game of Thrones, were going to make afterward, that sort of like alternate reality show where the South won the Civil War, and Malcolm Spellman and his wife were going to be sort of co-writers or co-producers of that show, but obviously that project never ended up happening.
Yeah, that's where I first became aware of him, because I follow a lot of screenwriters on Twitter, and a lot of them said, oh my God, Malcolm Spellman, he's great. And that even though that show fell apart very fast for a number of reasons, I'll never forget a lot of writers like giving the show the benefit of the doubt because he was involved.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he gets involved in many things unless he, has a strong belief behind them. So it seems, I don't know. I'm excited to see what this season is. Do you think? I know it's probably way too early to tell, but do you think this is a one and done miniseries, or do you think this is being set up so they could have additional series? I know I think I speculated in the past that they could end up doing Captain America and the Winter Soldier as like the sequel series to this.
Yeah, my guess is that we'll never see season 2s of these Marvel shows, but we will see follow-ups with different titles. And I think that's probably what will happen here if it happens.
Okay, so here we're going to run the interview with showrunner Malcolm Spellman.
All right, hi, nice to talk to you. The first episode is terrific. I hope you're proud of it, because I really enjoyed watching it. So I guess my first question is, you're with these characters, these two title characters, you're presented almost a gift. Two characters who audiences already love, but who've been supporting characters that haven't been fleshed out. So you have characters who are ready to learn about, and there's a lot of questions for you as a writer to start answering. So what were the big questions you walked into the show asking and prepared to answer about, Falcon and Winter Soldier?
What I loved about it is all the stuff we wanted to tackle to the characters was apparent and boxed up and ready to unpack, meaning this. We know Bucky has done awful stuff for the last 85 years, right? And we know that he has been manipulated and hasn't been in his right mind. And we know that he's never really had a second to breathe or become an actual human being. The audience knows that also, right? On top of that, Bucky is 106 years old and has never been present in one era long enough to be of that moment. So the out of placeness for him is extraordinary. And again, the audience knows all that. So for us, what we wanted to tackle with him was obvious, and it allowed everybody to deal with character issues in a very human way with a shorthand that the audience is going to have. Same thing with Sam. The reason I came to this project was the idea of a black man confronting that shield and that stars and stripes, right? And the ambivalent feelings I would have about it, you know what I'm saying? Obviously Sam would, and that wasn't lost on Mackie or Nate Moore, who is our Marvel exec. And we knew we wanted, when we dove deep into Sam, we wanted to position him in a way that felt relevant to today, so that journey about whether he says yes or you've seen the pilot or no, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Creates great emotion and creates a struggle and a story that people in the real world could be like, man, I get that, and that's compelling.
Yeah, I read some of the recent-ish comics where Sam takes up the Captain America mantle, and it struck me as powerful, the idea of him having all the power to do this job, but society itself having programmed him with doubt, and that was something that I think registers in this episode really well.
And we dig deeper and deeper and deeper into that. And when you see how it confronts him, and the answer is not the obvious answer, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I hope it's going to be very satisfying, because, yeah, it's you can't be honest in your storytelling and just have Sam pick up after Endgame and take off and fight battles. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That would be disrespectful to him. That would be disrespectful to our culture, and it would be bad storytelling. So yeah, we that doubt is what fuels Sam's journey, and that doubt is rooted in real stuff.
Yeah, and there's a scene in the episode. I don't want to go too deep into details because people haven't seen the episode yet when they'll read this, but where we see Sam is treated as a hero in one moment, then by the same person is disrespected in a really microaggressive way. And I keep on thinking of athletes who are celebrated but then told to shut up. Is that what you're going for in those scenes?
Yeah, I think it's even more common than that, but that's several people have made that exact comparison. Mm-hmm. I do think you can see everyone from Skippy Gates to Barack Obama to every one of us who's black in day-to-day life have those experiences. Mm-hmm. And when you think about the fact that senators and judges, no matter how powerful or athletes, no matter how famous they are, have this basic common confrontation that's based on identity and race, we knew it was going to resonate. And again, how could you ever write the Sam character going to get alone without dealing with the reality of what happens when black people try and get loans.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm the whitest white person in the world, and I'm trying to do my best, and I think it's incredibly responsible and exciting to see a Marvel show tackle this head on. I mean, was that part of the initial pitch? Did you come and say, this is what I have to do right now? And like, were there any speed bumps along the way, or is this always packaged in there no matter what?
Marvel knows what they're doing, and the moment from when I first walked through the door, I knew that was stuff I wanted to deal with this character. That's why I was excited. That's why I was passionate. And at no point was there any shying away from it, because again, if you look at Black Panther, and sometimes I'm saying again because I can't remember if I just said this to you or the last guy before it. If you look at Black Panther, Marvel's fans all over this planet are comfortable having these conversations. If you keep it fun and entertaining, you can also keep it honest and relevant. And Black Panther proved that.
Yeah. And the episode is,
by the way, so did Captain Marvel. Like, I mean, it just, yeah.
And the first episode, the one I've seen, is full of wonderful little details that even they keep like nerds like me just like looking at this world and excited about what's going on. All those little questions like, do Avengers get paid? What's it like to come back after 5 years of being vanished away by Thanos? It's a lot of really fun world building and detail. Like, how'd you work that into the script and into the world? What were those conversations like when you first said, okay, what does the world actually look like after Endgame?
It was, so we knew this. The world, if you think about 3.5 billion people disappearing for 5 years and then coming back, you have a global problem that everyone has to deal with. And we knew we wanted that to mirror what's happening today in our world, right? That creates a commonality. The bank scene, a lot of people are responding to that and just that logic. And it's interesting because that conversation, the way Marvel works, there's a collective of creative people up there, right? And so at times you're dealing with people who have worked on every Marvel movie on one specific scene. And that bank scene and the groundedness of how it functions, that went all the way up to the top, a bunch of voices filing. So it was a surprisingly intense back and forth with a lot of people about what details matter to them and how we quantify it, on top of that, the more socio-political issues, more social issues of black men getting a loan. So yeah, no, it's funny. That was a lively debate.
Speaking of, I'll go into the social political thing again. Like, I feel like he's only hinted at in the first episode, which we've seen, but Flag Smasher certainly seems like a villain that some people will be ready to rally around in 2021. Was he like always a character choice you want to make sure you introduce early and paint as a character who you kind of understand why people would want to follow that lead?
All the villains in this series, and there's more than one, right, are dealing with the issues of their times, which is the post-snap world, which is very similar to our pandemic world. And all the villains in this series believe they are heroes. And their argument for why they are heroes is going to be very, very compelling. We did not demonize any of them. And you're going to be rooting for some of these villains in this series because of what's motivating them.
Yeah, I think it would be irresponsible to discuss the idea of someone putting on the Captain America costume without talking about what that actually means to people around the world.
That's exactly right. That's what this whole journey is about. And part of what this series is about is, as Marvel moves into this next phase, we wanted heroes that felt like they are of the times. You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't want heroes that felt like they could be fighting crime, 20, 30 years ago. With the DNA, how they walk, how they talk, what they believe, and what they've been through needed to resonate with young people and old people alike of the 2020s moving forward. With, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, we it had to happen. Like, it's about the next phase. I think you just got to tap.
All right, they're kicking me out of here, but thank you so much for your time.
Saw it.
All right,
later, Jacob.
You too.
And that does it for today's episode of Slash Film Daily. You can follow all of us at slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast on Apple, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please, if you like this podcast, head on over to iTunes or Apple Podcasts and write us a quick review. It could be a sentence or two. Don't just rate it. Actually write something. It helps so many people find this podcast, and we appreciate everybody who does so. Tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you on Monday.